Tonight, I'm privileged to have three gentlemen with very important experience on global geopolitics. Professor Vladimir Danso is an international relations expert, former director of many places, the LESIAD, and also the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, where he's lectured many people. Prof. Danso, thanks for joining us. Good evening.
You're very welcome. Good evening.
Great to have you. We also have Dr. Olayinka Ajala, who is a senior lecturer politics and international relations at the Leeds Beckett University. Doc, thanks for joining us. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having me.
I also have Colonel Festus Abuaji, retired, a security analyst and a retired military officer. Colonel, good to have you on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me. My regards to all my colleagues.
So I'll start with geopolitically how unprecedented these times are. It will seem to me as if the international order is being rewritten. And by international order, I mean what we've known since 1945. United Nations, World Bank, IMF, US being the main power competing with Russia, Europe being their main allies. It appears all that is gone. China is supposedly the second competitor to the US. The current administration in the US seems more friendly to Russia. Their language towards Europe is not very clear. Africa seems to be caught in the middle. Let me start with Dr. Olayinka. Is it fair to say that the geopolitics of the world is being profoundly changed, particularly with the second coming of Trump? And to what extent is that happening?
Yeah, you're right that international geopolitics is changing. And I don't think it should catch any one of us by surprise. And I have two reasons for that. When you look at Agenda 47, which is Trump 2024 manifesto, the whole issue of American first was clearly defined there. And two key issues from that document, which I'd like to highlight, the war on drug cartels, whereby Trump specifically stated that he promised to deploy all military assets on drug cartels. And then the second one was asserting control over energy resources. He promised to bring down oil prices, and he promised to control the price of oil as much as possible globally. And then the other one is the Trump National Security Strategy, which came out last year under 5 main headings. And the key one under that is the flexible realism. And all of this come under the American First agenda. So all of these things fit into U.S. national security strategy going forward. So it shouldn't catch us by surprise.
How different is the Trump approach to previous U.S. approaches? For example, some would say that Biden and Obama, to an extent, sort of were interested in being the world's policeman, even though it was always America first. It wasn't as explicit. They also felt that the rule-based order, respect for international institutions like the UN and some of these treaties were very central to the foreign policy of the Biden and then Obama administration. How different is Trump from what has happened in the US? And number two, is Trump the main reason why global geopolitics is being rewritten?
Trump is quite different from the previous administrations of Joe Biden and Barack Obama. And I referred to the Trump National Security Strategy, which was published last year, 2025. And the first agenda on that strategy is hemispheric dominance, which means Trump is more interested in regional dominance as long as it suits American interests. It's clearly stated that he's not interested in being world police. Now it is more of what favors America, what are the key issues, even if it is at odds with the interest of its allies. We can see the way Europe or European leaders are being treated, or the way they perceive to be treated by the Donald Trump activities. So the moral doctrine is very key to all of these things that we are seeing. And I think we're going to be seeing more of these. In relation to the other question, in terms of, I think strategically, America is going to continue to pursue its own interest. We've seen that in the West. We've seen that again also in Africa as well. You mentioned the attacks, the Christmas Day attack in Nigeria. Personally, I think this is one of the ways in which the United States is trying to reassert itself in the geopolitics of West Africa and the Sahel, trying to collaborate with Nigeria, trying to show that they are still a force to reckon with. But all of this still come under the American force. And just a couple of days ago, we heard that the Nigerian government received some deliveries of American military equipment. All of these are to protect the interest of the U.S. In the region one way or the other through seeking alliances and realigning its interest, especially since losing the drone base in Agadez. So we will continue to see this in the years to come.
All right, later on I'll come to the Nigeria question because Kennel has written a paper on regional security at the brink, U.S. distributing its footpaths following the expulsion from Niger. So let's park in Nigeria for a while. Let me come to Prof. Intridan. So opening question around how unprecedented we are in terms of the geopolitics of the time, based on the same premise I asked Doc. In your view, how different are these times geopolitically from maybe what you taught us in the early 2000s and the mid 2000s?
Well, thank you for the question. Basically, nothing has changed. It is the style and the depth of things. It is the same American policy, foreign policy of America first or American dominance. What has changed is the personalities involved. Normally when you have a person like Obama, you mentioned Biden, they were pursuing almost the same agenda, but with a different caution or that kind of thing. But the rascality of Trump is such that he wouldn't give a damn to the methodology he uses. The main thing is that the empire is dying. The dollar's weight in world affairs through the petrodollar issue is coming to an end, one way or the other. China, Russia, and the BRICS are now showing the way where American influence through the petrodollar is waning. And it must come back, as Doc mentioned, through the Agenda 47 and the issue of hemispheric dominance. If they are able to control Venezuelan oil, and Venezuela has the largest deposit of oil in the world, so if they are able to control, then they will force oil prices down one way or the other. Two, they will get people to buy oil in dollars and to maintain the dollar dominance. So it's a strategy to pursue the same American agenda. I don't see anything different. The difference is that this one is ruthless, careless, and more devastating in the sense that it is drawing the world towards a war. I was looking at this thing and I'm saying that earlier wars in the world have been have been closer using the same methodology. If you look at the First World War, the Second World War, the irredentist attitude of the leaders, their domineering character, the way they wanted to view the world, how they pursue pursue things that make them unique. Of what use would America try to save Iran from what is happening there? And they think that when they bomb the people and kill many more people and change the regime, then they have done something better for the world. It is unthinkable. Or the 25th December thing in Nigeria, what has it changed? Killing innocent people in order to change Nigeria. So it's a matter of muscling up and to show that they want the world to listen to them, even though now they are weaker. Greenland, I mean, come on, give me a break. And we see that it is to cow down Europe for Europe to come down to talk. And Europe is chickening out. They are now starting to talk. When they should have given a bluff to the Trump administration's efforts.
Let me deal with the first thing you said around is the same policy by different actors. Some may argue that actually not necessarily the same policy. So for example, Europe has been a traditional ally of the US. Now, even in the Ukraine war with Biden as president, the language of Washington was very clear that Russia was the aggressor. With Trump seems to blame Europe for the war in Ukraine. Number two, the language of his national security strategy that Doc referred to in 2025 seems to see Europe not in the same cozy terms. It doesn't even identify Russia as a strategic enemy. It then sort of creates three strong countries. It basically talks about US, Russia, and China as the strong military powers. So it appears to me that the Trump administration is rewriting even the rules of international cooperation. So I'm not sure it's just the personality. It's also yes, America first, but in a more, in a less reverent way, and compromising old alliances. That's how some people see this, Prof.
Well, they may be right. I see it in a different light. If they need Europe for pursuing America First agenda, they would go for it. Now they can see a docile Europe which they don't need, because they have given Europe the umbrella for so long a time. When they were going in for Noriega, they didn't need Europe. When they were going for Allende, they didn't need Europe. When they needed Aristide in Haiti, several other places that they have gone and disturbed the peace of the people and taken whatever they wanted, they didn't need Europe. They only need the bubbling Europe to support one way or the other. And so clearly Trump is going in for what he thinks is good for America, the white supremacist kind of thinking, America first, white supremacist way of ruling the world. It happened during the First and Second World Wars. And that's why I am more concerned. Because what is happening is that if what we saw in the Second World War, where the idiot called Hitler, made white supremacists or the racism the cornerstone of his onslaught on the world system. And clearly you started off by talking about how the system we have known from 1945 is dwindling or dying. Clearly, if multilateralism dies, we'll go to a third world war. And it's dying because Trump has put a wedge in multilateralism. He doesn't respect the rule of international law or whatever it is. He doesn't respect it. And that is the last straw for us, because it happened in 45, it happened in 1918, 1945, it happened again when the League of Nations couldn't hold. Now the UN system, because of the anarchic nature of the world today, the UN system is also dying completely. And that is where we should be more concerned.
Let me ask Doc whether he thinks the pattern of what we're seeing suggests a third world war, because of course in the Second World War, US almost entered reluctantly at the end because they were attacked by the Japanese, Pearl Harbor and the rest of it. Doc, would you say that when we look at what's happening and what Prof has said, you agree that the signs of a possible third world war are on the wall, or you wouldn't go that far?
Personally, I won't go that far because I think all the major players understand that a third world war will be very devastating. When you look at the weapon of mass destructions these countries have amassed and the capacities. Just last week, Russia used a super hypersonic missile just for the second time in this war, and the whole Europe, they quivered. They were like, what exactly is going on? This can reach the whole of Europe, and this is a missile that can actually carry a nuclear warhead. So I totally agree with Doug that yes, the international relations and international organizations are failing, and we are tending towards anarchy. But I'm sure that even the countries are also wary of a total collapse, because it's not going to be in anyone's interest.
Let me talk to you about the Europe situation. So what Trump has done in Venezuela is not that unique, because as Prof pointed out, Noriega was taking Allende, Aristide. All of these guys on the Western Hemisphere have faced a certain US interference based on the Monroe Doctrine. But for the US to say they want Greenland right now is supposedly in alliance with Denmark, which is a member of the NATO, right? So if the US does annex Greenland, some people say that will be a direct sort of attack against another NATO member. As we are speaking, I'm told that some European countries are thinking of sending a permanent military force to Greenland to serve as a deterrence. So my question is, this US-Europe rift and this envying of Denmark, how serious is it, and how will it rewrite the traditional Pacific Atlantic alliance we've seen for the past 80 years?
Yeah, we can see what is happening in Europe right now. It's a big dilemma for the EU, for European partners of the US, as well as for NATO. Because when all these things happened, it happened within a 72-hour period. On one hand, they were praising the capture of the president of Venezuela, Maduro, praising that. But on the other hand, they were very, very measured in their response to the issue of Greenland, because they didn't want to upset the United States. And so it's a dilemma for them, because you cannot justify one based on the issue of morality and then claim international law for the other one. So I looked at the statement of most of the European leaders and NATO. Some of them, it's a big dilemma. There's no way you could justify what is happening in Venezuela under international law. They then began to use the issue of morality. The question is, who is the judge of morality? Who is the person to say whether this is moral or not? So they have a dilemma on their hands. On one hand, they don't want to upset Trump, and rightly so, because for too long, Europe has turned itself to a welfare state. Rather than defending themselves, building their military infrastructure, they depend so much on the US. So when Trump came in his first term and insisted that they had to increase their defense spending, they thought it was a joke. But now they are saying that the whole of Europe, despite sending weapons and supporting Ukraine, they've not been able to push back Russia, and Russia is gaining more ground every day. So they understand the fact that if the US decides no longer to support European security, then they are basically almost defenseless. So on the other hand, trying to use the issue of international human rights law, international law, you cannot justify one and then condemn the other. It's either you condemn both or you accept both issues to say, well, maybe the US has faulted in international law based on the capture of Maduro, and then it shouldn't or it can't go into Greenland. But you can't, on one hand, support that on the basis of morality, and then on the other hand say, don't take Greenland. It's a dilemma in their hand, and it's something they are trying to tread really. But I don't see, for me personally, I think there's no win-win for Europe in all of this.
Professor Nchidan, so how irrelevant is Europe becoming geopolitically? That's question number one. And question number two, after World War II, we had a bipolar world where you had US, Russia, until the Cold War ended, where US became the dominant power. So my question to you is, are we in a multipolar world, a bipolar world, or unipolar world, looking at where we are today, Prof. Nchidan? So
we were nearly at the brink between the Warsaw Pact and NATO. And gradually, when the Warsaw Pact imploded, that is when the Soviet Union imploded, America erroneously believed that it had won the war. And therefore, it started two things. One, American invincibility was to be shown. And two, the whole world must be Christian or must be baptized into democracy. These are the two policies that they have pursued up till today. And now it's biting back at them, because there is a clash of civilization one way or the other. The forceful nature of America's thrust into the world with their democracy and with their domineering character is balancing back at them in all facets, because they have used coercion, diplomatic coercion, and all forms of sanctions, etc., to cow down the whole world. And it looks as though, as China and Russia got out of the cold, they are rather now beginning to reassert themselves. And this reassertion is irritating to Trump, especially when the dominant dollar is in recess now. And people are now going to trade, seriously trade, outside of the dollar, including even Saudi Arabia, which signed agreement with the US in 1974 for the petrodollar, the dominance. So these are some of the issues that are aching and itching Trump to want to bring America back to dominance. But the methodology is wrong, extremely wrong, in the sense that it puts everybody in a quandary, especially Europe. Europe, like Doc said, doesn't know whether to support unequivocally or to play whatever it is. But to play footsie in this international kind of jigsaw geopolitical game cannot be. My fear, as I said, is that if this international system collapses, that is, the multilateral system collapses, there is a possibility of a war. Supposing China takes Taiwan today, for me, it will be even be legal, because there is no document that shows that Taiwan is a country, a sovereign country. In 1973, when Taiwan was taken out of the UN and the main China was made the main representative of China, it was agreed that Taiwan remains a component of China, but two systems. So why is it that now we treat Taiwan as a sovereign country, sending $11 billion worth of arms and ammunition to Taiwan? China can have that legal right to take over their island. And then Russia would not allow American dominance everywhere in the world. You saw what happened in Syria when Russia rushed in with heavy equipment to support Assad. So it is that today there is a possibility that anything can. Russia has a big presence in the seas of Greenland. If they also go in to protect their turf, like they did protect Crimea, we are going to see turbulence in the geopolitical game. And that is my fear. That's my biggest fear.
I'll take a short break. When I come back, I'll draw Colonel into the discussion, because we are bringing it a bit closer home. On Christmas Day, the U.S. announced it had attacked or helped to attack certain terrorist positions in northwestern Nigeria. The Nigerians frame it differently. We'll find out what this means for us in these parts and other matters of concern. This is the point of view. Stay with us. Welcome back. Tonight on A Point of View, we are asking the geopolitical question: how much has the world changed? A look at the trends, a look at the tensions, and of course Donald Trump being the central figure. My guest, Professor Avle Menchue. So we also have Dr. Olayinka Ajala and Colonel Festus Abaji. Now, Colonel has written a very interesting article, 11-page policy brief on US's distributed footprint, security and partnerships, arguing that since their expulsion from Niger by the new junta, US has begun spreading itself in other parts of Africa, Ghana, Benin, and other parts. But his analysis of the Christmas Day attack in some places in Nigeria makes for very interesting reading. Before I ask him to comment on that, Doc, since you have a Nigerian sounding name, so I assume you are from Nigeria, how did you interpret what happened in Sokoto on Christmas Day, with Trump initially claiming that Christians were being killed, and then later on saying that he had collaborated with the Nigerian authorities to do some bombings? For some of us, it seemed like the Nigerian government was sort of playing to the US narrative. How did you interpret that whole Christmas Day incident?
Well, we need to look at it from two different perspectives. The first one is from the Nigerian perspective. So last year, Nigeria was designated as a country of particular concern because of the number of killings in the country, particularly the killing of Christians. And then this created a lot of issues within the states. And there were subtle threats, such as banning some Nigerian politicians from entering the US, asset freezes. All these conversations was going on. So when the issue then happened, Nigeria, in its own attempt to limit an attempt at damage limitation, they decided to then, collaborate and dialogue with the US to first establish that, well, yes, there are disproportionate killing of Christians along the Middle Belt region of Nigeria, But this is essentially not a genocide because all religions are affected. The US then sees that as an opportunity to reassert its dominance. Remember that after the coup in Niger, the US lost drone base, the biggest drone base in Africa, which is in Niger. That was lost. They lost the ability, the surveillance ability across West Africa and the Sahel. So the US is significantly weakened in terms of its reconnaissance and intelligence gathering in the region. So they need to get new partners. And this gave them an opportunity to then come back to Nigeria and say, well, we will help you. We will help you fight insurgency as long as we partner, and also to fend off Russia and China. Remember, since the coup, we've seen that these three countries, the alliance of Sahel states, they are tending towards China and Russia, particularly in terms of their security interests. So the US wants to use that as a leverage to then reassert itself, to bring itself back into the region. Nigeria, on the other hand, wants to placate the United States to say, well, for you to be sure that we are not complicit in the killing of Christians, we will collaborate with you for intelligence gathering and also allow you to carry out attacks. So it's a diplomatic balancing by the Nigerian government, and also an opportunity for the the United States, to reassert itself and its dominance in the region through coming in from Nigeria.
Thank you. Colonel, your paper goes much deeper. You analyze this from at least three angles. The idea that, yes, because of what happened in Niger, US is looking for other places in West Africa and saw the Nigeria opportunity too good to miss. But you also analyze it from the military capability angle from Nigeria, where you say the Nigerian Air Force has wings but has no eyes and ears. And therefore, practically, if it needed to deal with the threat of terrorism, it sort of needed the US, because the capabilities of the Nigerian Air Force in defending itself was not as sophisticated as its other international partners. And then you also spoke about Tinubu's own balancing act between sovereignty and then sort of getting the help he needs. So I just want you to put it in context for us. How did you interpret what happened on Christmas Day in Nigeria with the issues in Sokoto, and put it in military context for us as well?
Oh, thanks once again, but please allow me to make a short commentary on the broad narrative that was discussed prior.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah, it's very possible that all these dynamics could usher the world into a world war. The idea of nuclear wars being a prohibiting factor, at least last year, was questioned. Now, last year, there were two major conflicts that took place. One was in May, I think it was for 5 days, between two nuclear powers, India and Pakistan. They chose not to use nuclear weapons, but to use other equally lethal weapons in the form of missiles and drones. So you could have a world war in which incrementally you start maybe with rifles and machine guns, the traditional tanks and aircraft, bring in all these sophisticated missile systems, and before you realize, one of the parties has dropped a nuclear bomb on the other. And that was precisely what happened in 1945. The war started as a war that we call traditional. The other war was a 12-day war between Iran on the one side, and then Israel and the US on the other. Now, Iran is purported, sorry, not Iran, Israel allegedly has nuclear weapons. That publicly it doesn't deny or accept. The US is a nuclear power. Iran has got the technology and the resources to almost make a nuclear bomb. That war was fought with other armaments than nuclear weapons. Of course, we don't know why it ended so suddenly, but probably there was a hint that one of the parties could use a nuclear device. So my whole idea is that when a war starts, it starts slowly, incrementally, and then it widens. And some of the points that Dr. Vladimenchi and Dr. Olayinka have made suggest that some of these dynamics, seizing territories, was one of the factors that caused the Second World War. Because Germany and Italy and Japan seized territories. And those whose territories were seized refused to acquiesce. So the way and manner in which, as our two scholars have said, America wants Greenland. But let's remember, America even wants Canada. And said it's prepared to buy Canada if that is possible. You see it? So one side of the debate is that probably the US is signaling or messaging. And Dr. Nchudansu mentioned the question of Taiwan. With all that America is doing, we should not be surprised if one day we wake up and China has taken Taiwan. But the way China will go about it will be very, very different. In one of the papers that I wrote last year, I identified that the way America behaves is very much in the transitions of Clausewitz and Jomini and co. We remember the dictum, war is a continuation of policy or politics. Now, America goes about it using threats and armaments. China goes about it the Sun Tzu way, where you use deception and you use other methods, including spreading infrastructure, which eventually will give you what you want. And Hong Kong is a classic example. China never fired one shot and never threatened to use force against Hong Kong. But it's gotten Hong Kong. With all the demonstrations that China occasionally does, and I think this year has done one, deploying and exercising, demonstrating around Taiwan. That's a Chinese way. It doesn't ruffle feathers. But as Dr. Nchudansu said, the way and manner in which Mr. Trump is going about saber rattling, almost fighting everybody, it's a cause for...
So if I hear you correctly on this point, you're saying that the nuclear deterrence to a full-blown world war may be overstated because we've had wars actually. It's just that the wars didn't continue into the nuclear side. But the idea that because we have a number of nuclear powers and therefore world leaders will not get into a full-blown war, that idea is fanciful. That it is possible that in spite of the nuclear deterrence, they could go to war.
Well, the doctrine of the mutually assured destruction does not 100% preclude the use of nuclear weapons. All it does suggest is that given the consequences of a nuclear war, those who have nuclear weapons might be deterred because they also suffer consequences. But there are different types of nuclear weapons. You can have a nuclear weapon that would destroy Accra. And you can have a nuclear weapon that would destroy the whole of Ghana, or let's say the whole of the southern part of Ghana. Or you can take out cities. And these powers who have these nuclear weapons have them. In fact, there are tactical nuclear weapons that you can use on the battlefield with limited damage. So we must not rule out completely that because of the deterrent factor of nuclear weapons, no war can happen. And I'm using the empirical evidence from history that the war can start. It will start on a small scale And then it will start escalating.
Mm.
And if restraint doesn't set in, then it becomes a total war. And any side which thinks that it is going to lose, as we say, if you are dead, you don't know, I mean, you don't care, might then be compelled to use nuclear weapons. So with those remarks, let me
let's come to Nigeria. Yes.
Yes. You see, we must all be concerned. And the concern I have, which I think is a school of thought shared by many Pan-Africanists, is that gradually Africa is being recolonized, being divided, you know, between East and West, between America, Russia, Turkey, China, and so on and so forth. African states are becoming enemies of themselves. And we cannot take out Ghana. By virtue of the fact that we have somehow, I don't want to use very strong words, allow the US to come and nest in the tree of Ghana and bring material that we don't have the right to inspect and know what is going on. America could draw us into a conflict with Burkina Faso, because early this year, or was it late last year, when this American Beechcraft or Beechcraft, whatever aircraft was sighted at Paga, and the youth demanded that they will not allow the plane to offload whatever material or cargo they had brought there. At about the same time, there was an attempted coup, an assassination attempt against Traore. And it was reported that, is it 7 or 17 Burkinabe soldiers, fully armed, had entered Ghana. And yet Ghana, at least messaging-wise, signaling, optics-wise, has positioned itself as, you know, a neutral arbiter, and at least based on good neighborliness, you know, is reconciling with Burkina Faso. This Nigerian question, my colleagues have already used very diplomatic, you know, terms. But clearly, it's a case of Nigeria or its president outsourcing its sovereign security responsibilities to the US. You see it. You don't stop the ISSP and Boko Haram by using drones alone. Because part of the game is control of territory. So if you haven't even got the drones, or you haven't got the munitions that are precision in effect, it doesn't mean that you must go to America to acquire precision munitions, which sincerely Nigeria hasn't got. What Nigeria has are munitions that are used in open warfare. So you're fighting a conventional enemy and you go and blast it, explode it, and then everybody dies. But when you are in Maiduguri, which brings us to urban terrorism environment, or you are in Sokoto, you cannot use the kinds of munitions that Nigeria has acquired from Turkey and China and even Israel. Nigeria started with Israel in 2006. That was the first time it acquired drones. So somehow Nigeria felt that it must, if you like, diffuse the pressure that America was putting on it by saying, okay, you come in and do the work. And if there are any consequences, at least the blame will shift to you. The selection of the target is also equally worrisome. Now, Sokoto in history, in the history of Islam in West Africa, and Nigeria in particular, is not an ordinary caliphate. So why America decided to go and hit Sokoto because of the ISSP, which only started in 2017 and left Boko Haram, which had been around in the Northwest since about 2005, other literature will even say earlier in 1995, Nigeria clearly played into the hands of the US. And again, they mentioned the framing of the messages was also very disturbing. Tinubu was at pains to say that, look, both Christians and Muslims are dying. Indeed, it is not true. that only Christians are being killed, even if Christians may be in larger numbers. But I don't think we even have the statistics. And yet America or US President Trump was very insistent that this was a fight against Christians. So he turned himself into a crusader, and then decided to signal that the attack, it is actually worsening, turning the situation in Nigeria into one of religion.
All right. Let's take a breather. I'll come back and we'll wrap up with Prof. Introdanso and Colonel Festus Abuaji retired. This is the point of view. It's a geopolitical analysis of where the world is. We haven't even touched on Iran, but there's still a lot to cover. Stay with us. Festus Abuaji. Colonel, before I come back to you, let me give Prof a final thought on the Nigeria and the West Africa situation and the point around security. So, Prof, how concerned should Ghana be about what happened in Nigeria, number one? And number two, the fact that now Kotoka International Airport seems to have become a base for the US. So, since they were expelled from Niger, Benin, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Chad seem to have become the distributed space for US military accoutrement. How concerned should we be in this country, and how delicate is the balance we are striking between being seen as a US ally, which we've traditionally been, and also the growing importance of China, and of course the issues around Russia and the Sahel 3. How can we navigate this?
Well, navigate we should, but I think Festus has said it all. What was missing was the very fact that we need to read beyond the lines. Since the coup in Niger, the US has always tried to find a way of getting back. They couldn't have just lost their base in Agadez just for that. And then Niger controlling the uranium. So the idea that ECOWAS wanted even to go in within 1 week, that was another insane thing. There was no way, and Festus will tell you that there's no way a multinational force can be mobilized within 1 week. But it was clear, as one Nigerian senator then condemned the whole idea and vowed that the Senate was not going to allow it, was that Trump wanted Nigerian troops to go in as if it were ECOWAS troops, and then Americans would have come in, and then there would be a regime change. So all such ploys to get back at those countries that are defying the norm, the American-led norm, is still there. They would always want places. And as Festus said, Benin, Ghana, Ivory Coast are ready spots where they will get their lily pads from where they would launch whatever it is, whether it's assassination or whatever it is. Is it not ironical that the so-called flights that we saw in Paga coincided with the coup attempt in Burkina? So we need to look at all these and know that none of us is safe. So if we play ball with the Americans, we are in trouble. Then we allow us. Ghana has a lily pad already, because I know there is this comprehensive defense pact that we signed includes a small base. I don't know how to call it, but they have a small office over here at the Air Force base, I'm told, where we cannot inspect whatever they are doing. We cannot even get near. You cannot even go there and find out what is there. I don't know whether our military intelligence or the NIB or any other of our security agencies know what exactly the Americans are putting in there. And because it is a pad, we can be drawn into any other antagonistic war with any other person. I mean, like Abuaji said, Burkina Faso. We have antagonized Burkina Faso before, when our ex-president was in the US and made it believe as if through Burkina Faso terrorists were coming to Ghana. And it brought a diplomatic spark between us and Burkina Faso. So we can be drawn into anything. And that's why we should be watching. We should be very careful not to allow America to have a military base.
Just a quick one on that. Now that President Mahama is being touted for the AU chairmanship, and with his overshares to the Sahel 3 and his experience, how crucial will he be in managing all of this?
It's very crucial. I know he's a very good politician. Let's be blunt. He's being suspected of being more left, that is, closer to the Russians. This one, I had some conversation in some quarters. The EU, the Americans view him as somebody who must have been supported by the Russians to come to power or whatever it is. So they're dealing with him with suspicion. But Americans come in with coercion and with whatever. They knew Maduro didn't like them, for example. So some pressure was put through all angles, and they will put pressure on our president. What I want him to do if he gets the nod, for example, is to gather Africa as one unit. Let's fight this kind of maneuvering with one fist. But if we begin to make Nigeria, Benin, Ghana, and Ivory Coast in the camp of America, and then others are in some other camp, then we will be recolonized, like Festus said. And the recolonization is ongoing. Only yesterday, it was, Turkey trying to go all around Africa, signing agreements, defense pacts agreements, and building mosques all over. Israel recognizing Somaliland, etc., etc. We need to be very careful. Already the colonization is going on. The Sudanese war is an external war being fought on our soil, for example. So Africa must gang up together and be one, resolute, in the interest of Pan-Africanism. That's the only way we can fight.
All right, thank you. Colonel, let me come back to you on the Niger issue and the aftermath and Ghana and the rest of it. I mean, I don't know. I don't even want us to discuss Ghana's military capabilities, because you discuss Nigeria's own military capabilities in the context of a war against terror. We know what's happening in Burkina Faso, and as we speak, we are still arguing about whether we need a new presidential jet. So clearly, our capabilities don't even compare to that of Nigeria. What kind of thinking should our defense strategists be pondering over to secure the country and also to reduce any threats we'll be facing from outside?
Well, I think you've changed the angle of the discussion slightly, but never mind. See, what I think is that probably in the whole of Africa, we have not woken up to these evolving dynamics geopolitically, especially the technological advances and how they are being weaponized. That as we speak, for instance, just about 7 African countries have got policies dealing with cyber. I don't think any probably has a policy on drones, maybe with the exception of Nigeria and so on. But Ghana is facing threats. Just because the threats have not materialized must not fool us into thinking that our priority should be presidential jets or executive jets or whatever. So I would expect from a paper that I'm currently studying that I'm doing for CBD, that it is long overdue for all African states, including Ghana, to sit down and seriously evaluate the threat, dynamics in and around them, beyond the strategy. Professor Nchudanzu will tell us that when 2019 or 2020 we wrote that national security strategy, it's only a piece of paper. The capabilities, the resources, the enablers that must go into the implementation of the national security objectives, we've not started. We are placing emphasis on things which, are nice, VH, end of service benefits, and so on and so forth, when the capabilities that our institutions need to safeguard our territory and protect our sovereignty are lacking. That if 2026, the Ghana Armed Forces hasn't got a drone unit, that's quite worrisome. Then we'll become like Nigeria, start incrementally, 9 here, I think they got 9 drones from Israel in 2006, but that was ad hoc. We must learn from the lessons of Nigeria and craft a strategy of how we're going to enhance our drone capabilities. Because in the absence of drone capabilities, and I'm not even trying to differentiate, the different typologies of drones. All drones are not the same. The ones that are used for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance are very different from the kinetic ones, which also has different configurations and different capabilities. But we don't have any of them. The few that we had, I don't know the number, which we sent to Boku, the batteries could not even be recharged. So I was told that the drones were there as skeletons, and of course, as usual, a few will crash. So we must get serious with this security thing. Nigeria, among the drones that it has acquired from its external partners, is also manufacturing indigenous drones, which is very possible. The drones that the Houthis use against Israel, Tel Aviv and co, are not all from Iran. Some of them are manufactured by the Houthis in Yemen, sitting in villages. Because the literature shows that you can have off-the-shelf, components that you can use to build a drone, including all the cyber aspects, the AI aspects, and so on. It's a matter of having a policy and investing in that policy. Otherwise, we wake up one day and the threat has already materialized. Or as the situation is now, incrementally, we'll be forced to outsource our sovereign security responsibility to the US. Now, what the US has done, which you mentioned, is that they learned the lesson of losing Agadez and said, okay, now we're not going to put all our drones into one country. Let's distribute them on a large scale and have a wider footprint. So let's go to Ghana. The drones are not in Ghana, but the technological devices, the eavesdropping devices, the guidance and whatever it is, communications and so on, are based here at Kotoka International Airport. And as Dr. Njudansu said, it is not even at that hangar. When these Americans arrive by sea or by air or by land, we have no right to go and inspect what they are coming into the country with. So what they take into that hangar and what they take in that aircraft, which is flown by a US defense attaché, for instance, to Paga, we don't know. I don't think national intelligence knows. Because the agreement says that Ghana will not inspect anything that the Americans bring. So the Americans will become our vanguard, when the flag goes up. But we can do it. Even if we have to use traditional methods, whatever, we can do it.
All right.
This idea of how the US is now wielding influence, Ghana, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, and I'm sure the equipment that Dr. Olayinka mentioned will include not only munitions, but also other devices that the US will begin in the initial stages to be monitoring what goes on in the Northeast, the Northwest, and so on.
All right. Thank you for those sobering words. And I'd like to commend the article and point that we will share it on our website as well for those who are interested in reading this brilliant paper on regional security at the brink, US distributed footprint, security partnerships, and sovereignty trade-offs in post-Niger, West Africa. My guests have been Colonel Festus Abuaji, retired security analyst, retired soldier, Dr. Olayinka Ajala, senior lecturer, politics and international relations, Leeds Beckett University, and Professor Vladimir Njudansu, former director, LESIAD, and also of the Ghana Armed Forces Staff and Command College. My name is Bernard Avle. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.